And when you look at the president coming back to the country the other day, the whole road from Simaleng Airport right heading to towards the presidency was jam full of people. Those are not AI created images. Those are Cameroonians, human beings. And a hot lot of them were not paid to be there. They came willingly. So the political parties are not formed based on core ideologies. Political parties in Cameroon are just formed based on frustrations, like a young man sits in his house and it's so frustrated about the ruling party and how the system has been over time, and he just feel like, I need to grab power and change something.
Not sure what's going on. I haven't seen Anglophone elites come out and say, hey, let's align behind this person or that person.
Very close to the election, days or weeks before the election, the president, without approval from any house, issues decrees authorizing ministers of government to borrow billions from several banks for several reasons, just about the issue of ego. SDF is at a point where SDF ranked very low in the last presidential polls. SDF ranked very low. So you cannot tell me Joshua Osi sees himself closest to taking the presidential seat.
Right now, the average, like the cost of living are skyrocketing, inflation is galloping, the country's in the mess, and we seem to be unable to manage something as basic as garbage, as waste. You know, Trump came out one time and said Africa is a shithole. But excuse me, Cameroon is literally right now a shithole country. You go to Yaoundé, there's trash everywhere. If we can't manage something as basic as waste, as Hillary was saying.
For every Cameroonian, this was my message to Cameroonians going out to vote. For every Cameroonian going out to vote, before you go to the ballot box, have this retrospective moment with yourself, how hungry you are.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Hearth of Thought. On today's episode, I'm joined by two young Cameroonian men, and we discuss the upcoming presidential elections and everything that is at stake. Thank you for joining the H.O.T podcast. As you know, Cameroon is heading into a critical election season in a few days. And there are many questions on the minds of Cameroonians. I don't know if you're following, if you're like me, I'm, online, just looking at what people are saying, getting into the minds of Cameroonians, trying to understand the overall sentiment of, how we're feeling, because it's historical and groundbreaking, because this is the first time that we've had this many people enrolled to vote, right? And 8 million people reported that have enrolled to vote. It's critical for us to see how things are going to play out. And these elections, it's not just about the ballots. It's not just about governance, or it's really about the future. It's really about the future. And I believe that in this new era where young people are starting to have a say, with social media, we're starting to get a feel of what is in the minds of Cameroonians. And I think it's important for, us as young Cameroonians to join into this conversation and kind of see how things are going to play out. So I'm happy to have you here for us to talk about this. But I really want this conversation to be centered around how we think this would change the landscape, if at all. Because there's a camp of people that feel like, well, it's just going to be another elections like the previous ones, and others are strongly believers that no, it's going to be a game changer, right? So if you had to describe, per your observation and per your own analysis, the political and economic climate of Cameroon as we have it right now, right? What would you say is the atmosphere per your observation and, per how you're reading things?
Thanks, Carol, for this session of the Hearth of Thought. What an exciting piece of your podcast. And talking about Cameroon, it's motherland, and we are always very hopeful for the best for Cameroon. But talking about the 2025 presidential elections, like you say, this time around, it has pulled a lot of gravitas. And post-elections, there's been a lot of anticipation and optimism as to what is going to be the outcome of this election and how it's going to be a defining moment in the history and also in the future of Cameroon. especially with a lot of young people now being very active in the political space and also having a contribution to the overall direction of the country, be it directly or through social media, as we've seen the rise and the wave that TikTok has played, even in the recent polls in the USA, and how famous presidents like Donald Trump used it also as a tool in the election recently. The Israeli prime minister was also talking about how they are going to use TikTok politically now. So you can always bring in social media as a powerful tool now. But I would say that the optimism and the gravitas that the 2025 polls brought a couple of months ago, I don't think it's the same now. I think the tempo has reduced. I think a lot of things have been mellowed down. Looking at the antecedents of events that has happened from candidates enrolling or sending in their candidacies to Elecam, and the electoral processes that has gone on right to the Constitutional Council, the filtering of candidates and the candidates that are left now. So I think that the atmosphere has significantly changed from when elections were originally announced by the president. I think to win a political election, presidential one for that matter, there are so many constructs that comes into perspective. For example, if you're running a presidential election and you think that you're popular, remember the populists, remember the voters, remember the masses you're dealing with. If you go to Douala and you go to Bonaberi and you take up a stadium and you're calling for candidates for Maurice Kamto, CPGM, SDF, whatever party, I can tell you almost 80% of the population that turns up for a rally for CPGM is the same population that turns up for SDF, and it's almost the same population that will turn up for UDP or whatsoever political party. So you need to understand the populace you're dealing with. So when you go to a stadium and you see thousands of people in that stadium, you cannot make your win from looking at that population or from pictures taken with drones. The second thing is, if you're looking at the political landscape, how many polling units do you have all over Cameroon? Thousands, probably. And how many of those polling units do your party has representatives in those polling units? So you cannot count on the honesty and on the uprightness of Elecam officials or administrative authorities sent from Minat to go and follow up to make sure that elections results are democratic, are fair, and that you get the same results that were voted in. So if you have a segment, say 1/3 of the Cameroonian population who are vouching for you, and you have, let's say you're covering 30% of the polling units. So from the 30% of the polling units you're covering, you cannot expect a fair election coming or fair results coming from the remaining 70% you're not covering. So I think that the last presidential election, the results Cabral Libi got, I'm not sure he was quite excited or he was quite certain those were his feedback, because I went to several rallies in Yaoundé. I saw rallies from Joshua Osinabangi. I saw rallies from Cabral Libi. I saw CPDM rallies. I saw rallies from Kamto. And I can tell you, if they were judging from the population they saw, it was enough for anyone to think they won the election.
And that's exactly my point. That's exactly my point, not judging from the population. Because we're looking at an electorate, right? We're looking at between the people that register to vote. That's where it plays out. And that's why voting is important. And that's one of the reasons why I'm calling out on my Cameroonians, go out to vote. Going to a rally is one thing, it's cute, right? But going to the polling stations, that's where it plays out. And the CPDM party has an advantage, an absolute advantage that other parties do not have, in the sense that they have control of almost every single communal level in terms of Elecam, as we all know, which shouldn't be the case. A state corporation shouldn't be, partisan or following a party, right? But that's not the reality. So if a party has control at the very grassroots level, do you think that, and their voters are of the party, right? Do you think because at a rally you saw hundreds and thousands of people rallying behind the Kamto, do you think that fairly represents a win for him? I don't think so. I strongly don't think so. But anyway, that's like a past election. For this one, however, I strongly believe that it's going to be super risky in terms of how they play with the numbers. So if
Carol,
1 million or 2 million people come and they're rallying behind one person, it doesn't guarantee them a win at all. I don't think
Carol,
so.
there are several dynamics that I always have to look at when I discuss politics. The fact that now we are counting about 29 million Cameroonians, and out of that number, we're having close to 8.2 million thereabout registered electorates for this
Well,
election.
you have to understand that the voting age is 20%. So we're supposed, in terms of demographics, we're supposed to look at the actual number of people who are at the age to vote. So that would be the part of the population that is above 20 years of age, right? So that would be maybe 40 or so percent of the population. So that's approximately maybe 12 million people if you look at the stats.
Those are different areas. We can have several debates around that, why we have people who can get into military and they are not able to vote and all of those things. But where I'm heading to is the fact that politically, Africa is one of those places where you have candidates showing up only 3 months to election. And all they do is they've saved up their 30 million and they've gathered 300 signatures and they want to stand in as candidates. It's not done elsewhere. I see that only done in Africa. So you don't expect a candidate, Maurice Kamto, show up from somewhere, and because he's gathered good political speeches to make overnight, you don't expect the young guys that have come up now. Now we've seen Isa Chiroma come up fully as an independent party, not sending votes or support to CPDM. We've seen former Minister Bello Buba Maigari done the same thing. And it's just how many months to election? People resigning from the ruling government, becoming independent candidates to go in for election. Now, there is no structure. Structure is very important. You would have to start from the grassroots level. If you go to the ruling party, CPDM, what they have successfully done over the years, which no party can debate that fact, is the fact that they have gone to the grassroots level. They have representatives right from the youth wing, the women wing, the men wing, from every village coming up right to the national level. They have that structure set up. So no matter what is happening, no matter where there is war happening in Cameroon, in the northwest, in different subdivisions, in the far north, CPDM has assured representatives there, and they are going to go to the polling units. They are going to follow the votes. And if you think of any rigging, probably, I'm not saying I've seen one, but probably they are going to do it. And there is not going to be any representative from UDP, from Maurice Kamto's party, from Cabral Liby's party, from SDF party to cross-check that. What is democracy? It's all about checks and balances. Okay, so there must be someone to check. If there is no one checking, then you cannot talk about democracy.
But the question I would ask you is that, do you genuinely believe that there aren't people that are fervently in support of the party?
Carol.
There are. I mean, youth groups currently where we literally have WhatsApp chats where they come and they're in full defense, full gear, and they're like, we are behind. And they're not pretending. They are. There's a bunch of people that are still very much in support of the ruling party, like it or not.
I mean, if you look at videos, Carol, I saw videos recently where the ruling party officials were sharing money. I mean, they're evident video. It's not something you can fake and say. They're sharing money to people coming for rallies,
I have a clip buses. I saw that video too.
And when I look at that, I see parents there old enough to be my grandparents. And they are collecting 5,000, 10,000 francs, collecting campaign gadgets and materials, and with so much excitement. And when you look at the president coming back to the country the other day, the whole road from Simaleng Airport right heading to towards the presidency was jam full of people. Those are not AI-created images. Those are Cameroonians, human beings. And a hot lot of them were not paid to be there. They came willingly. So sometimes when we go past elections, right? Sometimes when we go past elections, you hear people saying like, everybody complaining. Like I've had ministers of government complaining about the status of Cameroon. And sometimes I wonder then who should an ordinary Cameroonian complain to? Because a minister will complain how light is not working, a new is malfunctioning, another one complaining how Cam water isn't functioning where they can't get clean water, another minister of health complaining about roads. So finally, who should an average Cameroonian complain to? But during elections, you find out, well, everybody's voting for CPDM. Bro, I've been to several polling units during early those days, and I'll watch elections that are not rigged. I don't know about other polling units, but I've been in polling units where I was part of counting ballots, and the numbers were written, they were forwarded, when the results were being pronounced, I saw the actual results we got from the polling station.
Same, even in Young Ekele where I
And
vote
CPTM
usually.
won.
Yeah, no, that was a different where I vote usually in Young Ekele. Like Cabral won, that was last elections. He had 70-something% landslide majority. It wasn't rigged, and we were part of the people counting, and we're like, well, he won, and he did win in his in the Young Ekele region. And the same for many other regions where you can say, well, this is exactly what happened. But to jump off of this, I would like us to kind of talk about Camto's rejection, right? What Elecam put out was, and I'm reading it verbatim from their announcement, and it said multiple letters of nominations by Manidem. Well, this has brought up many questions. Your thoughts on this? Because I feel like in terms of Campos, people saw him as the most, besides Frunzi, he was literally the candidate that has kind of shaken the stage the most. That's during the last elections, right? And this year, him not being there, he appealed. He went to the Constitutional Council. Many things that he did to like fight for his candidacy, but at the end of the day, he wasn't selected, and we have a total of 13. There's Iodi Iram Samuel, who I think is one of the favorites. So Kamto isn't on this list, right? What do you think this changes for the elections in terms of the outcome? Because people were looking forward to Kamto being there, and right now he seemed to have been the most popular opposition candidate, and now he's not there. So what do you think? Do you see any change in the horizon in terms of maybe a favorite candidate? Or first, before jumping into that, what do you make of Kamto not being part of this ballot?
I think on Kamto's part, there was a lot of short-sightedness in his political strategies for this forthcoming election. I think he prepared a lot on how to win and forgot to prepare on how to become a candidate. And CPGM having all the advantage, all the cards to its side, and the structure, and a lot of political thinkers, we call them the political think tank. So they obviously knew where Kamto could run short. Of course, I will acknowledge, and I think CPGM does, that Kamto was a retread in the last polls, and they didn't want to take chances. What has changed in the dynamic is that all of a sudden, the wave or the tides are not gravitating towards Joshua Osi or Cabral Libi, or who should have been the next favorite. But for some reason, the tides are gravitating towards either former Minister Chiroma or Minister Bello Buba Magari. If you look at their outings, Cabral Libi and Joshua Osi are nowhere close to their outings. One of the strategies is that, sorry to say this, what the Biya government has done over the years, which it's so smart, is that they go to every region, they go to every subdivision, they go to a quarter of the population where there is a population, say about 10,000 people. They pick one person from there and they appoint him in a political office. And each time he gets appointed, CRTV does something, picks up cameras, go there, they rally people around that environment, and they come and they send messages of thanks to the head of state for appointing their son. For trusting their son. It shows the head of state has belief in their community, he has belief in their region or their subdivision. And he has chosen their son. So they place allegiance to support the head of state till the end. Now, he becomes the focal point of the head of state to that population. So therefore, the population is proud to have him there, because if he's a director or a minister somewhere, what he does is he tries to get people, maybe not necessarily from his family, he tries to get about 10, 20 people into civil service, be it the army or wherever he has influence. He gets people into the civil service. So the entire community knows that it is because the president appointed him that he was able to get their children into civil service. So he keeps that entire population spellbound to CPDM. And he does that for every region.
And that's
So
exactly
therefore,
my point. That's exactly my point
yeah,
when I was saying earlier, because they're protecting their own interests.
yeah.
That's
So
why
now
they're standing by him.
during election, so there was about 100 million raised from Northwesterners living in Douala for CPTM campaign.
So, okay, for these elections, do you believe that? I mean, we can already tell people can anticipate that it wouldn't be fair and square, right? But I'm trying to understand by how much would they push this? Because when you look at, I don't know if you've seen the stats, but in terms of the electorate per region, we currently are at, in the center, there's 1.4 million people registered. In the extreme north, there's 1.3. In the littoral, there's 1.2. And in the west, there's 900,000. In the north, 800,000. In the northwest, 680. In Adamawa, there's 500. Like, I don't know if you've seen that stats, but when we're looking at this, the key regions, as always, is usually the case, right? Center, extreme north, littoral, west, and the north. Those are the key players. And when you look at the center region, which party do you think is a favorite? And the extreme north as well, because I'm trying to understand. Like, I saw Cabral going to the northwest region. I don't know if you saw the videos of that. Issa Chiruma went to the northwest region. Obviously, Joshua C is from the northwest region, and we have the emblematic SDF, that's it, Northwest Heritage. But do you genuinely feel like these elections, objectively, not object, because we don't know, right? You don't know until we've voted. But just the sentiment we're getting from Cameroonians, do we feel like fairly more people are not going to vote for the party? Besides, us talking about elections being rigged or whatever, but fairly, do you genuinely think that the majority of the people are for or against the ruling party?
Usually after the elections, they are against. But during the elections, they are for. The the reason, it's a simple reason. Someone comes up to you now. His name is Mr. Issa Chiroma Bakari, and he's had this profile, this career in the ruling party.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at the cards that you have before you. Most people would say, like the normal parlance go, you go for the devil, Because when you look at Chiroma now, from the center region, most of these regions that you count, I'm one of the believers, maybe I'm going ahead of your questions, but I'm one of the believers that even without any form of malpractice or rigging, CPTN is going to win by a good gap.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And the reason why I believe, for these elections, the reason why I believe that so firmly, it's because when you look at the political culture of Cameroonians, like if you go by scriptures that will say that Israel was supposed to be in captivity in Egypt for 400 years, and they went past by 30 years.
30 years, yeah.
And it's because they were not ready for deliverance. I firmly think that Cameroonians
we're not ready for deliverance.
Yes, we're not ready. We're not ready.
And it's what you're saying reflected in our attitude. Do you think we're behaving like people who aren't ready for deliverance?
And the reason why we are not ready, I said something earlier that if you go back to reflect on it, it's because we are groomed not to be ready.
Okay, that's
it's a culture. I said the Bia's government built not just a political system or a governance system; it built a culture. So that's why I say we are not ready.
Because like Cameroon's population is mostly youthful, right? And we can't say that the youth don't feel represented because we have young people like Iram, that youth favorite, Cabral. But we've seen that the young people right now also have that culture that you're talking about ingrained in them.
Yeah.
But I think I have a bigger problem because besides us questioning whether things are going to be fair and square, for me, my biggest preoccupation right now is Bia even ruling this country? Because we see him appear for 5 seconds every now and then. And we see him, with all due respect, he's aged, but we see him not knowing where he's at. We've seen those clips where he's at a conference or somewhere, and he doesn't. We've seen those videos. Most people have seen those videos,
Yeah.
and we've also seen the video recently that they made of him. He was going to Switzerland, and he came out for 2 seconds and said hi, and the commentary of the people were like, "Oh, look at the president, so strong, so
Carol,
vibrant."
is President Paul Biya at his age now and physical posture and reactions in public space? I don't think it's any different from former President Joe Biden. Okay, now we over talk about it probably because it's Africa, and in Africa we criticize everything. We go an extra mile to criticize everything. But if you go legally, it doesn't stop him from being president. There are no legal frameworks that disqualify him at this stage from being president.
Well, but if mentally he's not able to rule the country, then he shouldn't be ruling the country. If he doesn't know where he's at the conference, how is he ruling a country?
That's a subjective argument of his mental state, because we cannot go any length to prove that.
We've seen the clips, we've seen the videos of him asking. We've seen those videos.
We've not seen him falling off the podium or on the.
But so, objectively, Cameroon is not doing well. Objectively, right now, the average, the cost of livings are skyrocketing, inflation is galloping, the country's in a mess, and we seem to be unable to manage something as basic as garbage, as waste. Trump came out one time and said Africa is a shithole. But excuse me, Cameroon is literally right now a shithole country. You go to Yaoundé, there's trash everywhere. If we can manage something as basic as waste.
Carol, what are we Nigeria, doing? Who is our next door neighbor, democratically changes her president every 4 years. I don't think Nigeria is any better. They have some advantage of the population and the rest, and of course exposure and all of that, especially in the entertainment industry. But I don't think Nigeria is doing any far better than Cameroon when it comes to governance, even the level of insecurity in Nigeria as well.
Yeah.
So I don't think that Cameroon as a young nation has to overblame herself.
I don't like that young nation argument. I strongly dispute we're a young nation. We've only been independent for a little bit. Excuse me? I don't like that argument, because we have an advantage that back, historically people didn't have that. There's technological advancement, there's transfer of skills, there's availability of the knowledge, right? That they didn't have back then. But today we do have that. And we have the East Asian countries that, went through a revolution, and they call it the East Asian miracle, but it wasn't miraculous by any means, if you ask me. They put in the work. So to me, calling ourselves young as an excuse is as though to say even us as young people can achieve anything by virtue of the fact that we're young.
If you sample the youthful population now, of course, political awareness is growing. More youths have turned out and registered for this campaign. Of course, we know population has also increased, but more youths have turned out for this upcoming elections. But it doesn't cancel the fact that many youths ask themselves, what is in there for me?
Okay. Let me now jump on that and ask a question. Of all the candidates, you guys can tell me, who do you think, we're talking strictly promises, who do you think is making a promise to Cameroonians that resonates with the average person and can promise that the person's life can improve based strictly on their political agenda? Who do you think? CPDM right now, their slogan, I love it. I can't lie, I love it. I always love their slogans over the years. They had La force de l'expérience. That was a strong one. They had something ambitious.
That move from several grand.
This one is what? Grandeur et espérance. Who do you think is promising? Who do you think is those promising candidate per? We've heard people campaigning for TPDM. We've seen Jacques Famille Dongo. We've seen a multitude of his minions out there campaigning on his behalf, which means an insult to Cameroonians. You should go out and campaign. Excuse me. But I digress. Who do you think? We've seen Hiram. We've seen Cabral. I don't see much of the lady if she's doing anything at all. I don't know. I would have loved to see her more, out there. But who do you think is promising? Just strictly looking at what they're saying and their agenda.
But political parties are not formed based on core ideologies. Political parties in Cameroon are just formed based on frustrations, like a young man sits in his house and it's so frustrated about the ruling party and how the system has been over time, and he just feel like, I need to grab power and change something. The way political parties are formed in Cameroon, they are just formed from shared grievance. So a lot of people are frustrated over the years. What's the reason for Issa Chiroma? What was his reason over the media why he decided that at this point I needed to come out and be a candidate? Because one, he's been trying to reach Biya for several years. He hasn't gotten to Biya. He felt that Biya has lost touch of leadership. The Council of Ministers hasn't held in how many years? He's ruling by proxy. So there are no concrete reasons to say Biya's government started failing or Biya's government has been successful. That's why I've been part of it. The reason why I'm opting out of it is because starting from this moment, it started failing. It couldn't do this and couldn't do that.
It's cute to see people standing and giving their speeches, but at the end of the day, how much power do they have over the nation as a whole? Because as you said earlier, CBDM is ingrained at every single level. And right now, we know that the party has factions because we're thinking it's true that right now Biya is the face, but at the end of the day, should a random person even win elections? Do you even think that it's possible if the person doesn't control the military? That's a problem that I strongly ponder over, because I'm thinking, well, we know that there's the Biya and there's eventually going to be the après Biya, because whether we like it or not, it's a ticking bomb. It could be this year, or it could be in 7 years, or it could be in 2 years. We do not know, right? So the question to me is less about who is going to win now, but it's like, once the bomb explodes, what's going to happen to Cameroonians? And do you think a regular person, or do you think we can trust the people to conduct elections in a fair way, per the constitution? And also, do you think the average person, even if they were to win, let's even assume that these elections, Iram won, let me just say whatever, do you think he can feasibly take over if he doesn't control the military per our current climate?
I think that it's going to be difficult to come to that, to that point where he's declared winner. And the problem is about taking it. Yeah, I think you've moved so fast forward.
I know. I'm like...
Yeah, you need to go through Electoral, you need to go through Constitutional Council before you get to the joint session between Senate and National Assembly, when you're then sworn in.
And that's what I struggle with, because I'm struggling to see a Cameroon where the polls tell us that Iram won, for example, and what next? Like, I struggle to see a Cameroon where he's like gracefully enthroned, if I can say that. I feel like that, I don't know. I struggle to see that, if you ask me, especially without controlling the military.
Yeah. A lot of politicians, candidates now, not generally politicians, a lot of candidates now, they also don't think about that. That's why if you listen to the first part that I mentioned, I talked about short-sightedness of
the candidates.
The candidates, because they have just this wide dream of becoming president, and forgetting that this current system has its roots sunk into so many areas. And to pull up all those roots and get yours planted, it takes time, it takes wisdom, it takes meticulous planning. And if you don't plan all of these things and have them figured out right to the end, for example, going into an election, Cabral Libby should think, picking him as an example, he should think, okay, what are the possible things that the system can use against me to disqualify my candidacy? That's one. You try to find out, how do you come out of that? What are the possible things they can use against my party during the elections? How can I be handicapped during the elections? You put all the possible scenarios. And it's the same way the CPDM Central Committee is thinking. How do we handicap the other parties? Because it's a wall, it's a tussle. How do we keep the other parties at base?
100%.
And if your own political house is not thinking that far, they are going to outrun you. And then you think, okay, assuming that by the polls I win, how do I ensure that I get Elecam and the Constitutional Council declare that I have won?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's one thing. How do I get them declare that I have won?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because at this point, Elecam officials, they are not solely independent candidates. They are doing campaign for their political parties.
Hmm.
Ministers of government are not just neutral candidates. They are doing campaign for their political parties. Members of the Constitutional Council are not neutral candidates.
Mm-hmm.
They are not neutral personalities. They will vote and they will vote for a party. So how do you get them to declare that you're a winner? So these are things that so many of these parties are not thinking. And if you don't think to that extent, then CPTM, I'll be glad to tell them that CPTM has a plan for every stage.
Yep.
Actions. Most people interpret political actions in the now. I mostly don't interpret in the now. And why do I say that? Look at the antecedent of events happening at the same time and try to see what are the possible dots you can draw across these events. Very close to the election, days or weeks before the election, the president, without approval from any house, issues decrees authorizing ministers of government to borrow billions from several banks for several reasons. Billions. From the history of presidential decrees, I've never seen several presidential decrees at the same time authorizing ministers to take such amount of loans at the same time. Of course, we've borrowed money across different periods, but I've never seen that amount of loans at the same time happening at the same time. Within that period, two ministers of government, sitting ministers of government, defect from the party. One of the oldest ministers of government defect from the party, and both of them are creating two political parties, running as two separate candidates. Two of them, everybody thought probably, okay, if it's a good thing, maybe they have a game plan, maybe they want to do a coalition. Two of them are not doing a coalition. It's happening at the same time after borrowing money. Okay, this candidate, if he's not a candidate for this presidential election, definitely he's looking for the next 7 years to build up a new strategy at the next 7 years. I wasn't thinking he'll be ready to wait for another 7 years. So honestly, I thought he might want to do a coalition, even though not as a candidate, with any of the candidates that he will resonate with. Maybe send his votes to them or talk to his followers or following to vote for that person. And then, no, he didn't endorse anyone. He said people should vote for who they're. Yeah, he didn't endorse Cabral Libi. So
I mean,
now
he asked the opposition to find to coalite, and then he will support the coalition, but nobody did. So
yeah, but I think that if he outrightly found anyone that he thought this person shares the same ideology or kind of philosophy, what MRC was pushing out for, or stuff like that, and then just tell MRC followers, follow this person, send the votes you are supposed to give to MRC, send it over to this person, and probably in their coalition talks, though not as a candidate, but let's say they agree that okay, you're going to be the prime minister or something if we get the government, kind of thing. Already putting into the government, because if you've been fighting for change, I don't think you can only effect that change if you're at the helm. There are several levels you can effect change, not only at the helm. I understand coalition is a different topic. We can talk about why candidates are not doing coalition and why Cameroonians see a great potential if candidates or so many candidates had done the coalition. I don't think it's just about the issue of ego. SDF is at a point where SDF ranked very low in the last presidential polls. SDF ranked very low. So you cannot tell me Joshua Osi sees himself closest to taking the presidential seat. Cabral Libi, as at where he ranked to, I don't think Cabral Libi saw himself that kind of esteem, or where you believe so much that you were really close to getting that presidential seat. Yeah. So many of the candidates are in the same position. I don't think any of the candidates really saw themselves to be that close to toppling Biya's government through an election. But if they did a coalition, they would have been close. So do you really think that Akeremuna, who I see now giving his votes to Bello Boba Magare, is funny. It's a funny turnout of events for me. But do you think Akeremuna prefers to sit and be nothing for the next 7 years and not do a coalition? Cabral Libis prefers to just be a parliamentarian rather than giving a coalition and becoming prime minister or something in the government, or Joshua Osih prefers to be a questor at the National Assembly and not doing a coalition and becoming a president of Senate or becoming a speaker of the National Assembly. So do you really think? So I'm just trying to say there is some direction that the presidential decrees of the billions are heading to. And I don't see, I'm not saying anything, but I don't see
If you
any
get it, you
strong
get it.
reason. I don't see any strong reason why Maurice Kamto. I don't see any strong reason why Maurice Kamto at this point, after his candidacy has been rejected, he has accepted defeat and is backing out of this current presidential race, will decide not to send his votes to anybody. Okay, if
And
you
he's
decide not
saying
to
he's
send
remaining neutral.
yeah, I don't think that's being politically smart.
But I want us to talk a little bit about the state of the nation and the Anglophone regions, as they call it, Northwest and Southwest. Right now, Northwest region of Cameroon is not a swing region, if I can say that, because there's 600,000 people, 684,000 people registered right now in the Northwest. And in the Southwest, that's 437. So, but with this current state of those regions, and we can get into the security in the north, insecurity even in the capital. It's a lot is going on, but with the Northwest and the Southwest, how do you analyze the impact of the ongoing crisis that nobody seems to want to talk about anymore? How do you think unfortunately, talking about the billions, Sani, I'm not sure what's going on. I haven't seen Anglophone elites come out and say, hey, let's align behind this person or that person. And there's an ongoing crisis. It doesn't seem to be at the center of, I've only heard Cabral speak about it. It doesn't seem to be concerned of the ruling party to say, hey, we have this region and the crisis that has been ongoing for years. And now the reason is nobody can explain it anymore. And we are at the brink of an election that could be decisive or not. But how do you see those regions and the conflicts and the insecurity that's plaguing our country right now? And I know most people are defeated and they feel like, well, why are we even talking about this? Because we already know there's nothing to be said. Nothing is going to be done. But do you think that the Anglophone regions, even though they're not strong or they're not leading regions per the numbers of people registered or per, how they can influence the election outcomes, but do you think these regions should have been at the center of the elections or at the center of a party's like running their campaign on to say, hey, we need to bring our country back to a place of safety. We need people to feel not only safe in the northern part or in the Anglophone regions, but also in the capital. There's kidnappings, murders here and there. There's a complete state of disarray, and I don't seem to hear the CPDM party say anything about the Anglophone crisis. There was the one time that they did the Grand Dialogue, but ever since then, I'm very much concerned about that region, and nobody seems to be taking it to heart or talking about it.
Carol, I think the whole shamble of the crisis in the Anglophone regions of Cameroon has been successfully watered down over the years, both in political discourses and in media narratives. And it's just like the COVID pandemic. It suddenly died out of the media when the Ukrainian invasion happened by Russia. So the direction of focus changed from COVID into Russia invading Ukraine, and COVID suddenly died. So, but of course, it should have been at the center of discourse for many political parties now. But just as the ruling party or the media has not discussed it, it's not of big importance. The reason being that the media has successfully shown images and footage of schools successfully going on in some of those regions, and some of the localities that have supported the reopening of schools and businesses in those areas. The government has sent funds to those communities to encourage them for accepting normalcy, canceling ghost towns and all the rest. And of course, our population now is suffering from over 2 weeks of ghost town now in the northwest and southwest regions. A lot of things have been taken to a halt now, heading to the pools. And the reason why these discourses are not many or at the center of the discussions of many political parties is because, first, you've just called out the numbers. You see that the Northwest stands at about 600,000, Southwest at about 400,000. And if you look at the demographic, you see that both regions put together is only compared to one of the northern regions. About 1 million registered voters. So what is going to happen, or how does this affect the general outplay of this election? What is going to happen is that all of these regions that have been earmarked, or all of these, like not all of the regions, the two regions, the north and southwest regions of Cameroon, have polling units also assigned to them in several localities. And all of these polling units, because they have been marked as politically unstable zones, they have extra military presence to ensure safety for voters during that period. But now look at what is happening. All voters have been affected by the element of fear and threat that voters should not turn up for elections for the secessionists or fighters for the northwest and southwest region. And at the same time, when this is happening, there are people that have died in the few days. I've seen video footage of people who are killed and dumped on the streets of Bamenda. And when this is happening, people are thinking, well, why should I risk my life to go and vote? So there are going to be polling units. And to whose advantage, that was your question, is this going to play? It's definitely going to play in the ruling party's advantage, because the military presence, the military officials that are ensuring security at these polling units in the northwest and southwest, most often are CBDM militants themselves, because they have the right to vote. Military officials, they have the right to vote. And now most of the CPDM elites representing that region, who are supposed to vote in the subdivisions where polling units are found in that region, are going to go through military conveyance. They are going to be conveyed by the military to go to this polling unit and vote in a secure and serene atmosphere. Once voting is done, I don't expect in some of these subdivisions having one representative from Akeremuna or one representative from all the other political parties. All those who are going to be ensuring security and military officials, which are CPTM kind of candidates. All those who are going to be electorate, most are going to be also CPDM. Officials from Elekam and officials from Minat are also likely going to be CPDM electorate. So
in 2018,
all
we had
ramifications.
The whole sham with the fake amnesty. Do you guys remember that? The fake amnesty, the National Observer.
Yeah, but those observers, they don't go to the grassroots. I mean, even the real ones, they don't go to the grassroots. They remain in the popular polling units, and they make up their news from there.
For people watching, like, what can we say in terms of setting realistic expectations? Because many believe that, oh no, things are good. Like, realistically, what should we be watching out for, and what can we expect? Regardless of the outcome, what should Cameroonians get out of these elections feeling? Should they? I strongly believe that, as he said, the impact would be more immaterial in terms of creating an awakening, but I think realistic expectations should be set.
When you see a child who is not hungry, you see their behavior. They play around with food. A child who is really hungry is hungry.
So we're not hungry.
Do everything to get food.
As Hillary was saying.
For every Cameroonian, yeah, this was my message to Cameroonians going out to vote. For every Cameroonian going out to vote, before you go to the ballot box, have this retrospective moment with yourself, how hungry you are. And if you're really hungry, if you were really hungry, it might be too late or maybe not. The first thing you should have done is to ensure that everyone within your circle, your friends, your parents, your relatives, got a voter's card. That's how hungry you know you were or you are. So if you were hungry, you would have gotten your friends, your relatives, everyone within your contact list. You would have gotten them during the period where registrations were going on to get a voter's card. And if you did that, you would have probably persuaded them to buy your political ideology or whoever you wanted them to vote for. You would have done that. And the next thing was, you would have followed up with them to be sure they are really going to vote. Like checking in to make sure they know their polling unit, they know the time they are going to be there, they know the steps of voting. that's someone who is really hungry. But if you just went to Elecam and you got your registration card and you had your candidate within your heart, and you like, well, say salvation is personal, you just know it within your heart. If you know your candidate just within your heart, you're not really hungry. And whatever is the outcome of the elections, it's just going to be a reflection of how hungry you were.
Yeah, I can say with all confidence, I do not see a Cameroon with a change that doesn't involve military intervention. I don't see it possible, unfortunately.
I think one other thing is talking about the structures that are being put in place to ensure that the elections, that the results that we get from the polling units are transmitted to headquarters, and there is a trail of the process to ensure that it's as transparent as it can be possible.
Mm-hmm.
And just to add that one of the tools that helps for transparency these days, of course, even the US electoral system also has some uncertainty surrounding it as well. We've heard about Russia's input in the last presidential elections in the US. We cannot verify the authenticity of that. But I think that one of the best tools that young people going out to the polls these days should watch out for is social media. It's not forbidden to stream live results as they have been voted or counted. I think it's totally permitted. Of course, you can't go into the ballot box behind someone to see who they are picking. Yeah, they have the secret ballot. So, of course, but the process of counting is a transparent process. And if you're within any polling unit, it's quite important that you can stream live or you can video cover results as they are being counted to ensure that they are transparent, stream live, and people can have it over social media. And by the moment, most of the times people get results from different polling units before headquarters can even receive them. If you say register your votes, let's say you are in a polling unit and you register your vote, that's just personal for your viewing. And then if you're following up later on when it comes to regional levels, you can only but just view to compare what the region finally publishes as the votes that came out from your polling unit versus what you actually recorded.
Well, that brings us to the end of our podcast.
Thanks very much for having us on this session. It was quite an engaging and interesting conversation. And I'm looking forward to your next series of your podcast. I'm sure you have several interesting topics coming up.
I do. So, thank you for watching today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Like, comment, and subscribe for more.